Hey guys, today I'm going to be explaining the story behind Coheed Cambria's Afterman Descension album. This is part 2. The first part was Ascension. If you haven't already watched that video, then you should click onto the video before this. And I'll explain the story of Ascension because the two go together and might be a little bit lost in the story if you didn't watch the first one. First of all, to start off, I have to apologize. It's pronounced Cyrus, okay? So, sorry, I've been saying Sirius. But in my defense, it is spelled Sirius, okay? It's Sirius, like Sirius Black. So, from now on, it's pronounced Cyrus, and I'll be saying it right. But really, I mean, if you wanted it pronounced Cyrus Claudio, you should have taken out the second I, because that's just confusing. Anyway, so we start this one off right where we left off on the last album. So Cyrus is cocooned in this little shield by Evagria, and she's protecting him from all the other entities in the mono. But then Vic, Domino, Holly, and all the other souls in the mono start attacking her. And they start slowly chipping away at the cocoon that she has them in, and they start slowly sapping away her strength. And so this song is kind of about Cyrus and his heartbreak towards for Evagria, because she's already gone through so much pain in her life, and he's feeling exactly what she's feeling right now as these souls are attacking her. And he feels really terrible about causing her more pain after she's gone through such a hard life already. So they're slowly chipping away at the shield, and he feels like he's eventually going to die here pretty soon. So that's basically what the first track is about. So then we come to the next song, which is Key Entity Extraction number 5, Sentry the Defiant. So Sentry comes and rescues Cyrus right as Evagria is about to lose all of her strength. And so he possesses Cyrus and protects him that way. And so Cyrus then gets to see through Sentry's life. So you might remember Sentry from the previous album. He was the sergeant major that defied Vic the Butcher. And so basically after he finds out that Vic's plan is to basically murder all these innocent people, he goes, he defies him and then goes and tells one of his friends that he's going to go tell the field marshal in the morning about what Vic plans to do. He doesn't make it to the next morning because he's killed that night. And so his friend that he told is at the time too afraid to tell anyone about what really happened to Sentry. So years later, Sentry's friend ends up coming forward when Vic is being charged for war crimes. And so then Sentry's name is finally cleared. A bunch of years later, he gets the Medal of Honor post-mortem, and his family finally understands that he didn't actually kill himself, that he died really bravely. So since Vic and Sentry had an unresolved issue in the past life, then they start fighting each other. So Sentry is fighting Vic through Cyrus's body. So they're getting this huge battle, and then Cyrus realizes that Sentry is one of the good souls in the mono, and that he really deserves to pass on to the second level, which is the Utopia. And so he lets Sentry know what he learned from Evagria. He has to forgive everything that happened to him when he was alive in order to move on to the next level. So Sentry decides to trust Cyrus, and he ends up letting go of Vic and letting go of everything that happened to him when he was alive, and so then he's able to move on. So then that kind of leaves Cyrus vulnerable for a moment until Evagria steps in and helps him through. And Evagria ends up escaping from the souls, and she is able to show Cyrus out of the keywork so that he can get back home. After he exits the keywork, he finds out from Allmother that it's been 547 days that he's been gone, even though for him it feels like it's only been about a week. And so he's able to escape the keywork from the help of Evagria, and then he's able to land on a satellite space station type thing near the closest planet. And so that's how he's able to get back home. So that brings us to the next track, The Hard Sell. And so Cyrus returns to Valencine, and his family and his friends are kind of struggling to accept the fact that he's actually back, and he hasn't been dead for the past 2 years. And Cyrus is struggling with trying to figure out how much he should tell everyone about what he learned on his mission. Because if you think about it, he's learned the secret to the afterlife. And so it can really be like a theological nightmare if he were to come forward and tell the world what he figured out. So he confides one of his friends, Dr. Alan Linkov, and he tells him the news about the afterlife and, how to get there, and the fact that all the souls, no matter whether they were good or bad in life, they all go to the same exact place. And so his friend cautions him towards telling anyone, because he says it could be completely catastrophic, for people to find out that there aren't separate places for good people versus bad people. They all go to the same place. And also the fact that, the keywork is such a powerful thing, he's afraid that some people might try and harness the power of it for like nefarious means, as we know that Willem Ryan eventually does in the Amory Wars. And so the Prides also come and visit Cyrus, and they tell him, hey, you know, this is a secret that only the Prides have known for a very long time, and if you were to tell anyone about this, they would see it as an open declaration of war. So Cyrus is like, oh shit, well I guess that means I can't tell anyone. And so he's, he's kind of sad because the whole reason why he did this whole mission was to get recognition, to be taken seriously as a scientist, and then he comes back and he can't even tell anyone about what he learned. Mary's also obviously happy that Cyrus is back and that he's not dead, but she's also, really conflicted too, because she started seeing Colton, the officer that saved her from the Fair Lady in the previous album. So she's in another relationship with someone she really, really likes, and who actually invests more time on her and is more concerned with how she's feeling versus how Cyrus always treated her and how he would, put his work over her every time. So then that brings us to track number 4, which is Number City. And this one is a little bit of a flash forward. So this one is about a bunch of EMTs responding to this really horrific crash. So we come to find out that this crash involved 2 people and they were flung out of the car. And we find out that it was Cyrus and Mary that were in the car. So then we move on to Gravity's Union, which is the next track. And this one kind of goes back and explains, what happened right before the crash. Mary has decided that she's not going to stay with Cyrus. She's going to get a divorce and she's going to stay with Colton. So she lets him know that she can't stay with him, and he freaks out. Obviously, he's like, well, the whole time I was gone, the only reason why I was like so determined to get back was to get back to you, basically. And so she ends up telling him, like, hey, I'm actually seeing someone else. It's been 2 years, man. Like, I know it felt like it was a week for you, but it's been 2 years. She tells him about her relationship with Colton and that she can't just pretend like the past 2 years didn't happen. And also, she ends up telling him that she's actually 3 months pregnant with Colton's child as well. So that is obviously very crushing to Cyrus, and, he's completely distraught, and he, is so upset he ends up losing focus on the road for just a second, and he ends up crashing the car into a huge truck. Cyrus wakes up in the hospital, and he's in pretty bad condition, but Mary's in even worse condition, and he finds out she's had a miscarriage and she's in critical condition. So track 6, Away We Go. This is about Mary kind of walking the line between life and death. And she's kind of being led towards the light, towards death, towards the afterlife, and the key work, which in this universe is what the big light at the end of the tunnel is. It's the key work. And she kind of flashes back on her life, on all the happy parts, and especially the part where she first met Cyrus. And so it's kind of a bittersweet moment, and she is really just happy that she met him, in the first place, and all the good times that they had together. But then at the end, she ends up stepping into the light. And then that brings us to Iron Fist. So Sirius is released from the hospital a couple weeks later, and he's obviously completely devastated about Mary's death. He obviously feels very guilty about being the one who's driving and who ended up getting them in the car accident in the first place. He feels bad also about abandoning her during his mission, and, obviously really angry with himself for not being better to her, when they were together, and not being able to give her the family that she always wanted, like Colton was able to give to her. So, he kind of realizes that the most important thing to him in his whole life was Mary, and he is just really regretting pretty much his whole life about how he always put his work first instead of her, and, he would leave her to go on these missions, and basically he's regretting everything. So that leaves us to track 8, Dark Side of Me. And so Sirius is kind of thinking on the car ride home about how he's always kind of kept people at an arm's length, even Mary. And he's always, worked independently because he didn't want to open himself up to anyone, and he basically just kind of keeps himself closed off from everyone. And he just kind of realizes how unfair that is to people who really love him. And so he finally gets home, and Colton is sitting there on his doorstep. And Colton's obviously a mess because he's not only lost his girlfriend, he's also lost his unborn child as well. And he very obviously blames Cyrus for everything that happened to her and everything that he's taken from him. Colton and Cyrus have a confrontation, It's not violent or anything, it's just very, very sad, and, you know, Colton basically just asks him, why did you do this? You know, if you really loved Mary, you would have stayed with her, and not gone on this mission, or you should have just let her go, you know, like, you should have never came back. If he really loved her, he would have known that the best thing for her would be to never have left her in the first place, or to have never came back to ruin her life, you know, that she had finally gotten over him and was moving on, so he shouldn't have come back in the first place. So then that brings us to the last track, track number 9, Choose My Favorite One. And so in the months following Mary's death, basically the only thing that's keeping Cyrus going is working on his ship. He's rebuilding another bigger, better ship to take him back up to the Keywork. So he knows the secrets of the afterlife, and so he's going to use that to his advantage. So now he knows exactly where Mary's soul is. It's up in the Keywork. He also knows that she's not going to be able to know how to get to the second level, the utopia of the afterlife. She's going to be stuck in the mono, and he doesn't want her to sit there forever and ever just reliving her life over and over again. So he's decided that no matter what it takes, he's going to get back up to the Keywork, and he's going to find her. And then him and her are both going to go together into the afterlife and into the second round together. He's going to show her how to get there, obviously at the cost of his own life. He's decided, you know, he's not ever going to leave her this time. It's her and him forever. So he finally finishes building his ship, and he fires up All-Mother, and he tells her exactly what what he plans on doing. So that's kind of where we get that dialogue between with All-Mother saying,
Cyrus, is this what love is?
Yes.
So that's pretty much how Afterman Descension ends. And yeah, it's a really, really sad story. I think I almost cried when I first read it the first time because it's pretty devastating. So yeah, I'm going to get around to doing Vaxis, which is their newest album. I'll do that sometime soon. There obviously is no story for Color Before the Sun because it's not based on any of the Amory Wars universe, and it's not a concept album, so it has no like backing story to it. But yeah, Vaxis definitely does, and I will do a video on Vaxis, so subscribe if you want to get notified when I do that video. And yeah, thanks for watching.